Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, good. Yeah, this is going. All right. Divided lines. So the thing about the divided line is that actually chronologically it's book 6, right? So it is book 6, and I'm going to concentrate mainly on page 173, where there's a graphic as a footnote down there. But specifically 172, 173, that's what we're going to draw out. And once you understand the cave, which we actually looked at first, right? We want to jump ahead to book 7 and then went back to book 6 here in the videos. And there's a reason why. The cave and the divided line are really the same thing. It's just that the cave is much easier to understand. So recall, if you will, the cave. Do we need even to draw it? Okay, yeah, look. All I want to do is this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, we were just talking about justice and all that kind of stuff, and there's the the image, right? The thing or object in the physical world, right? And then we have the thing in itself. I'm sorry, the image. Sorry, image of thing in itself, right? And then we had the thing in itself, right? So if you recall, this is where we said like justice itself, right? And so that means what justice is despite our image of it, despite the object it appears as, and despite how we understand the object, right? And so right? Socrates, when he's discussing this, or Plato as he's writing it, whichever one you want to go. He begins the discussion of book 6 with an opening metaphor, right? He says, okay, so, there is a seer and a thing seen. And then he asks, was it Glaucon or Adimantus? I forget. Is there, in order for the seer, right, to see a thing seen, and I know this is awkward, right, but once we kind of get used to the jargon, it's not too bad. He says, is there not another entity or thing which allows this to happen? And that is the sun, because the sun is the source of light, and that source of light, rains down light on this thing, so the light, when this is illuminated, then the guy can see it, right? But without the sun being prior to, it has to exist above and before the thing seen in the seer in order for the seer to see the thing seen. Simple, actually, right? Well, that's how it works in the visible realm. However, in the intelligible realm, okay, so this is supposed to be a brain, okay? And that is a knower. And knowers know things like this. That is a thing known, okay? And then he asks him, well, in the same way that in the visible world we had, something overarching and prior, then in order to understand, for a knower to understand something known, then there must be something that sort of, rains down upon it, and he calls this the good, which is an odd kind of way of speaking, right? But the idea is the good is what allows us to know, in the same way that the sun is what allowed us to see. Make sense? So we're going back to, remember the cave metaphor when we had, there's the inside of the cave, there's the outside of the cave. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And if you recall, I think I drew a tree and then form of tree. Okay, so these two guys are about knowledge. These two guys are about the sun or the visible. Check? But the main thing here that we need to be squared away on is this. Notice how these guys really are levels of reality, you could say. And this is where we draw it back to the metaphysics. Because really what we're talking about here is, so for sake of argument, let's talk about trees because they're easy. Is the photograph of a tree real? right? This would be the photograph of the tree, the image of the thing. Well, sure, right? I mean, there is a reality to it, but it's not nearly as real as the object tree that you can touch, right? But then when we get to the world of knowledge, so now we're skipping into this world, right? Well, the good allows us, human beings, to see even more of the thing itself. So when we understand the image of the thing itself, right, we understand that it's a tree, and we understand how it works, and we understand things about it, right? Whereas dogs living in this world don't. They know that something is there, but they don't know what is there, right? Because ultimately, what is about the question of the nature of the thing. Animals don't question the nature of the thing, they accept the world as given. But our images of the what are always based on, what I'm trying to say here is the form, the thing in itself, if that makes sense. So this guy here is the most real. Now, in the book 6, he talks about the mathematical problem, right? He says, take a line segment and divide it in half and all that. And then you get this image on the bottom of page 73. And I'm just going to cut to that to save some time. So you have imagination. Then you have belief. Then you have thought. And then you have understanding. In the cave metaphor, right, so this is divided line. And what is it a divided line of? It is the divided line of reality or being, right? Because what he's saying is you can divide up reality into these various levels, right? Now, in the cave metaphor, it was the same thing, but we had different names. We called this the image, and here image, imagination, very similar. We called belief object, right? Remember that? We called thought the image of thing in itself, right? And then we called the understanding the thing in itself, or also form. So what is the divided line telling us? Well, we can start with, a knowledge, well, you wouldn't call it knowledge. We could start with the apprehension of images, but at the end of the day, we need to move ourselves toward the highest level of reality. So all enlightenment and all education is a movement of the soul toward the highest level, which is the forms. And the forms are eternal, and they are unchanging, and they are also not idea. Not physical, they are idea. Literally, the word in Greek is eidos, which we translate as idea. However, one thing to keep in mind is that the forms are universal in nature. So therefore, let's say I have an idea of tree, and I say, oh yeah, my idea of tree is this. Well, if you recall, he also made a big deal, whoopsie daisy, at the beginning of many beautiful things versus beauty itself. That shows up at on page 172, line 507b-ish, right? What he says is, well, there are the many and the one, essentially, okay? So in other words, we have this kind of scenario, right, where there's beautiful thing 1. I'm just going to call it beauty 1. Beauty 1, beauty 2, beauty 3. And we can disagree on beauty 1, 2, and 3, right? Because, someone might think that, this flower is beautiful and these two aren't, or whatever, right? As they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. However, there's also the form of beauty. In other words, there is a beauty itself that exists above and beyond any manifestation of it in the visible world, right? This is the intelligible world. Because we have an idea of the nature of beauty, what it tries to do and all that kind of stuff, whatever. So we understand what beauty is in terms of form, right? The form of beauty. And where we see beauty in different things is not as important as the concept of beauty itself. And this is the real reality here. And these are fleeting realities that come and go, so they're ultimately not real. If we go back to Parmenides, this is the is, and this is the is not. And that's what the divided line tells us. The divided line tells us that at the end of the day, the real reality, so reality itself, equals eidos, or form, which of course in English is idea. Hence, idealism is the belief that the non-physical is the most real.